Good morning to you all. Hope this is my first class to you, that is 6th semester. My topic is implants and prosthetic in orthopedics. I am Dr. Venkatesh, senior resident in Department of Orthopedics. Okay. Hope you formatted the previous topics in your mind and be fresh with the new mind ready to take up the implants and prosthetic in orthopedics. This is somewhat difficult and somewhat boring subject also. I know how orthopedics feels in UG, that too in third semester. This topic is somewhat boring too, so let us pay attention. I will make it basic concepts ready to understand for you, so that the further topics it will be easy for you to understand about the implants and prosthetic. I have two classes. This is my first class, and in next class I will continue the rest of the topics. Okay. See this slide. Do you remember anything? This is how our orthopedic theater looks like. This person is struggling with the nail which is jammed in the tibia. He is hitting hard with the hammer. Do you remembering any related similarities to it? Yeah, obviously. Did you remember this? The Thor in Avengers hitting with the hammer. It looks like the same. This is how we deal with implants. Not like the same way, but sometimes. Okay. And in this topic, you need some knowledge of physics also, because implants and prosthetics mostly deal with the biomechanics of the bone and the implant metallurgy. So you have to need some knowledge in the physics also. So is there anybody who is interested in physics? They will understand it better. Okay. Even though I take two classes, you will continue the same pattern. How you follow the histology slides to identifying the are those slides are implants. What did you do in histology lab? Just remember that. You will remember the same way. The one that looks like a dinosaur head or something like that is a thyroid. Okay, by chance, if the examiner changes the focus, then we are ready with the plan B. Yeah, is it? So plan B is remembering the slide. The slide that top right corner broken is the slide of the thyroid or pancreas, something like that. In the same way, how many times I tell you about the orthotics and prosthetics and implants, you will remember the same way. But let us have some basic concepts of the implants. Why we use the implants, why we use specific implants, because it is very difficult for you to remember in every question. In every question, in treatment part, you deal with the implants. Like in proximal humerus fractures, you have Philos's plate, and in femur fractures, you have nail. You will be confused. At least I am confused when I am in using which implant to be used at what site and which fracture it is specific for. Okay, so that we have to know the basic concepts so that you can write easily with your own knowledge. So, anybody physics maniacs here? I know physics is a most difficult topic, but it is an omnipresent topic. Everything is physics. The beauty of it lies in omnipresent. Even in medicine also, there is lot of physics. Without physics, there is nothing. So, orthopedics is a mixture of surgery and physics. So, you need a basic knowledge, some basic knowledge of physics to understand this orthotics and prosthetics. Sorry, implants and prosthetics. Okay. I don't go with some scary physics like this. You know, I don't understand how this try and go back and how the dogs are controlled by seeing this. So you don't need to worry about such scary physics. I don't go with such scary physics, but you need a simple physics. Let us introduce the concept of force. You are well versed with the lockdown period. Force is defined by the Newton's first law. You know that any object that is at rest will stay at rest like this, and unless then external agent acts upon it. That external agent is the force. It is the definition of force, and it is a real application. So let's come to the basic force concepts. In orthopedics, we use three types of forces. That one first is the linear force. If a body is acted upon by a force that is in a single direction, you know force is a vector. It has both magnitude and direction. Don't be confused. In the coming 4-5 slides, I use both physics and mechanics terminology. Don't get worried. After that, you will understand. But these are the basic slides you have to know. So, force that acts linearly moves the body in a linear direction with single direction. Whereas moment is a force acting at some distance. This is the axis, and force is acting with at some distance. The distance between the force and axis is a momentum. Remember this concept. This will come again in nails and plates. Torque, you know, daily examples of torque is closing and opening the tap. This is the equal and opposite forces acting at certain distance from the axis. That is force couple. These are you learned in intermediate. Okay, just refresh that one. And next one is, this is the example. If you push the door at the distance from the hinge, you will push it very easily. If you come near to the axis, it will be more difficult. This is a daily routine example. This is the force moment. Okay. In coming slides, I use this terminology, that is load applied. From now, I will define it as a load. The force applied on the implant or the bone is known as the load. And the stress or the force that develops to application of the load is the stress. That is force per unit area. It is present inside the implant or bone. This is the stress developed due to load. And strain is the deformation. That is change in original dimensions by original dimensions is the strain. Okay, these are the three main concepts: load and stress, the reactionary force, and the deformation of the body. These are the load, stress, and strain concepts. Okay, there are basically 5 types of loads present in the ortho, that is acting on the bone or the implant. That is compressive, tensile, shear, rotation, and bending. Let us see with the other concepts: concentric loading and eccentric loading. Concentric loading means the surface of the body is acted equally in all directions by the force. Okay, the compression force is equally distributed across the surface. Imagine this is a pillar and with 2 springs. If you apply the concentric force, the 2 springs will get compressed equally. Oh no, this is a simple physics. If you load the object, that is apply force in with certain distance from the center, the spring that is near to will compress and the spring opposite will expand. That is tensile. This is called eccentric loading. Okay, these two are the basic concepts you will learn in tension band wiring. Next one is, this is the real application of the concept of eccentric loading in our body. The femur is acted eccentrically. Femur is not a straight bone. It has an anterior bow, anterolateral bow. So when the force acts on the femur in a linear direction, the medial, posteromedial surface will get compressed. Okay, and the lateral surface, outer surface will get tensed. That is tension surface and compression surface. Remember this thing. And next one is the how the bone fractures with different loads. If you pull the load, that is tension load is applied to the bone, it will go into a transverse fracture. See this transverse line. This is a transverse fracture. If you compress the bone, that is compressive force is applied, then it will fracture with some comminution. There is a comminution in the fracture. Okay. And if you bend, if you apply the both compression and bending force, then it will bend and give a different fragment. This is called butterfly fragment. There is a separate fragment. And if you torsion, that means if you twist the bone, then it will go spirally. It will give spiral fracture. Okay. If you try to bend a stick spirally, then you will understand how it breaks. Same way the bone will break in a spiral manner. This is the real bone application, real time in biology. In real biology, the mechanics of loading of bone is compression. Under compression, the femur may fracture. Under tension also, it may fracture. If there is a shear force, that is the translational tangential force, it will lead to displacement. Okay, shear force. And there is a torsion, twisting force, it will go spirally. and bending force will give the transverse fracture. These are the different types of forces acting during fracture. If you want to try it in a home, you are free now. So you can take a choco stick and try to apply different forces. You bend it, okay, it will fracture in a transverse manner. And if you compress it, then it will go into crushed into powder, okay. And if you twist it, it will open spirally. So you can simply demonstrate it with these sticks. Let's come to treatment part. What will you do if you accidentally break a beautiful gift given to you? That is a cup or vase, flower vase. What will you do? You will try to fix it. Yeah, that is right. Try to fix it as naturally as it was before. Okay. The same way, if the bone breaks, you have to fix it naturally. That is, you should regain this original anatomy so that its function will come to act normally. Okay. These are the different modes. There is a different mode of fixation. See the upper one, he fixed with a beautiful crown on it. Okay. Whereas the lower three uses plasters and threads. These are the different types. Same in a ortho also, you have different implants. You have to use at different places. But what matters is, in the first picture, the purpose is served. You can hold the cup and you can drink whatever you want. But in next, the lower three, there is loss of function. You cannot pour a water or anything in these cups. Still they are fixed, but they are not functionally. So what do you need is, you have to follow certain principles so that the purpose is served. Without principles, if you use the implants, it will lead to disasters. The function is not served. Okay. Of course, some things cannot be fixed, right? Yeah, but we orthopedics fix anything. If you give us implant, we will fix anything. Okay, this is for just for kidding. And what implant is for? Why we should use the implants? We can nature heals, as a famous statement. Nature heals and man intervenes. Yeah, this is right. If you leave the fracture, it will heal by itself. You cannot. You don't need to worry. But what matters is, there are three principles, three problems that we face. One is support and stability during healing. It will heal, but you need to support it and stabilize it so that there is no motion between the fracture fragments. You will give the stability to the fracture. That's why we use implants. This is one function. The next one is, you should restore its original anatomy. It may unite, but in a different manner. If the some joints part, that is periarticular fractures, is healed with a different malunion, it will lead to early degeneration. So you need a particular proper anatomy, restore its original anatomy, so that you need an implant. And next one is decrease morbidity, because it will heal for so long time. You cannot mobilize the patient in between. But if you use an implant or process something, you can early mobilize the patient so that the morbidity due to immobility will decrease. Okay, there are many other functions, but these are the primary functions you should attain. What are the temporary measures? If you encounter a fracture in an emergency department, what will you do? You will first splint the fracture. This is a temporary measure. See, the car is plastered here to prevent this front part of this is broken, so it prevents to fall off that part. It will plaster, but it does not serve the purpose. It is a temporary fixation. Like that, your fracture is also splinted initially. This is for reduce pain and to maintain some basic primary stability and to decrease the blood loss. These are the three functions of splinting. You will be taken a separate class about splinting. Let us see the basic definition of implant versus process. What is implant and what is process? This is repeatedly asked in your viva or in labs. Okay, the implant is a biological tissue that supports the normal function. Okay, it supports the biological tissue, that is, the bone is fractured and it needs to be united. So till the union is occurred, it will support the bone for healing. This is called implant. After the function is over, you can remove the implant. But whereas prosthetics, it replaces a missing part. That is, there is hip prosthesis, knee prosthesis, osteoporosis. Okay, it will replace a missing part. It cannot be removed because it acts as a original part. These are the two main basic differences of implant and prosthetics. And coming to principles, why should we use the principles? Because the fracture is always acted upon by forces of muscles. Muscles will pull the fracture fragments with different forces according to their action and direction. So an implant should counteract the forces acting to displacing it, so that it may unite without any malunions. And next one is the proper configuration. You should apply the implant in a proper configuration. That is, you need certain principles should be followed. I will discuss it in next topic. And it should withstand the forces and maintain reduction. That means it should withstand forces. If you use a low profile, that is less thick implants in a strong bones like femur, it will fail. It cannot withstand the forces acting on it. Femur is surrounded by bulky muscles, so it cannot withstand a large forces. So you have to use high profile, that is more thickness and more strengthier implants that should withstand the forces. These are the main principles. Of course, there are many principles, but at your knowledge for using undergraduation, these three are the main principles should follow during implantation. And choice of implant. Can I use any implant? Do you have a doubt? Should I use only plates or screws or nails for a particular fracture? In most of the cases, you can use any implants, and the answer is yes, you can use any implant. But there are certain restrictions and certain principles, provided the principles are followed. There is no specific indication you should only use the plates, or there is no specific indication that you should only use the screws or nails or tension band wires like that. But you should follow the basic principles. You cannot use the nail in the periarticular fractures because there is no medullary cavity. So there are certain principles should follow. Unless you follow the principles, you can use any implant. Otherwise, it will lead to disaster, great disaster, mechanical disaster. So coming to few slides of metallurgy. In pre-Listerine age, that is Lister is a, sorry, this is a capital. Listerine is a, Lister is a scientist who introduced the sterilization principles, hand washing and sterilization principles. Okay. So metals are used like gold, silver and platinum or iron. And Lavert, who experimented in animals, found that platinum was the most inert metal. Unfortunately, platinum, gold and silver were found to be too soft for clinical use. They cannot withstand forces. Otherwise, most women will ask for the gold plates and gold nails. They can use as a jewelry. So unfortunately, those are not possible. Okay. So this is a example. Coming to metallurgy, most common used metals in the implant production is the stainless steel, titanium and cobalt chrome. Metal should follow certain principles before making it to the implants. The first principle is it should be corrosion resistance because it is constantly present in the electrolyte media, that is blood and plasma. Those have electrolytes. So it should not corrode with other metals or electrolytes. Okay. The next one is the fatigue resistance because the implant is loaded with different forces during the process of healing. So it should withstand the fatigue. It should not bend or break. It should be fatigue resistance. And next one is the shape and dimensional compatibility. What is this mean? If the implant is designed in such a manner that it should accommodate the curves or tubercles of the bone. The bone has certain anatomical properties. That is, it is not a straight bone. Every bone is not a straight bone. So it should accommodate the curvatures of the bone. So it should have the bending properties during its molding. and it should has high resistance to tensile, torsional and bending properties. So it has to tough. It should be tough and it should be easily sterilizable. There is a problem with biological implantation, biological implants. So they are difficult to sterilize because they will react with the formaldehyde, strong acids and bases. So metal should not have that property reaction. So sterilization is easy for the metal implants compared to biodegradable implants. Next one is the freedom from toxic effects. These are constantly present in our body. So it should not affect any surrounding tissues or bones. So it should be free from toxic effects. These are the basic principles that should follow the implant. You are thoroughly asked, you repeatedly asked with certain questions from the patients. Will my implant get rusted? Tuppekutunda na implant teeseyala. These are the routine words used by the patients and these are the doubts. Will my plates get rusted? Most of the times, no, they will not rust, but they may corrode. I said no. Certain properties of metals, they are constantly in the electrolyte media because they are present in the human tissues. So they may get corroded, but not rusted. Okay. Then when should I get de-implanted? This is the again common question. Okay. You will get from patient or yourself get doubted. Should I get de-implanted? That is, should I remove my implant? The smart answer is, when should I remember? When the purpose gets served, you can remove it. Okay. But there are common time frames. In upper limb, you should remove after 18 months and it should be removed before 30 months because the bone will grow over the implant and it will lead to difficult to remove. So it is a general time frame, but it is not a constant. Okay. In lower limbs, you have to wait for 24 months because these are weight bearing. These need more support for the healing. Okay. Then what are the common applications? Remember, most of the times the implants are used like this. Nails are commonly used in diaphyseal fractures of long bones. Okay. That is femur, tibia. Wherever there is a diaphysis with a medullary cavity, you can use nails. Next one is plates. Plates are commonly used in periarticular fractures because there is no medullary cavity. You cannot introduce a nail and it should be anatomical reduction in around the joints. So you should use the plates there. And next one is the tension band wiring. I will tell about the tension band wiring. These are used in the eccentrically loaded bones. I said no, if the load is acting away from the central axis, this is called eccentrical loading. In such cases, you can use tension band. Next one is the K-wires. K-wires are used to fix the small fragments, that is supracondylar fractures, radial fractures, or a small metaphyseal or phalangeal fractures. Okay, metacarpals and carpals also. And TENS. TENS stands for titanium elastic nailing system. This is the one type of nails which are commonly used in pediatric diaphyseal fractures. I will tell about this in later slides. And external fixators. These are commonly used in open fractures because there is a risk of infection. You cannot use the internal implant. You cannot place a screw, plate or any nails inside the open fraction because there is a risk of infection. So you use the external fixator till the wounds get free of infection. Okay. Then coming to the basic implants, screw. This is the basic implant used in the orthopedics during implant fixation. You don't know, you don't require about basic, you require only basic features of this screw. You don't need the details. I will explain the basic mechanics. The screw has 5 parts. This first one is the head. The upper part is the head, and this is the shaft. Okay, this round, the serrations is there. No, this is called thread of the screw. This is tip of the screw. These are the 5 basic parts. Okay, this should be remembered for the screw. The biological screw differs from the mechanical screw. This is a factory screw. On the right side of your right hand side, you will see the mechanical screw. The basic difference is, see the head. The head is curved here. It is a wedge shape, whereas here it is a flat. These are the basic differences. And the tip is conical, here it is flat. Okay, these are the major differences for the mechanical screw, that is factory screw, and biological screw. Next comes the anatomy of the screw. You need the basic pitch. You have the screws in your home also. See, once observe the screw, it has a basic parts. This is called thread of the screw. Okay, the distance between the two threads is called pitch of the screw. Okay, if you turn one pitch, that is if you rotate the one pitch, then it will go for certain distance inside the object you are using to fix it. So the distance is called lead distance. Okay, remember, you remember, it is well and good. If you don't remember, it is also very good. Okay, but remember the pitch of the screw is the distance between the two threads. The basic mechanics of the screw is, remember, if you analyze this as a spiral staircase, the thread of the screw is a spiral staircase, and you are applying a torque on the screw. Okay, if you apply a torque on the screw, the object, that is wood or metal or bone, anything goes along this spiral. Okay, the screw goes inside and the material that are using to fix it goes along this spiral. Okay, this leads to rotational torque, that is torque is converted into linear motion. This is the basic mechanics of the screw. If anybody asks what is the mechanism of the screw, it converts the torque into linear force. Okay, see, as you apply the torque, it will pull the bone towards the plate. This is the basic application of the screw. Okay, see, as you keep on rotating the screw, it will pull the bone block towards the plate so that the both get contacted. This is the basic function of the screw. And you see the cortical and cancellous screws routinely in orthopedics. If you use the cortical screw, you will see the more threads. If you see the cortical screw, it has more threads with less pitch, distance between the pitch. Okay, this is the characteristics of the cortical screw. And the cancellous screw has more coarse pitch, and the distance between the pitch is more. This is because of the mechanics, the bone property. The cortical bone is so tough, so it needs more purchase. Okay, more pulling strength. You don't require that depth of knowledge. You just remember, the more the threads, the more the purchase power. That means it is difficult to pull the screw from the bone. So the cortical screw has more threads and cancellous screw has less threads. Remember the point. This is the lag screw technique. You don't need the depth of it, but lag screw should always apply perpendicular to the fracture. Okay, this is the same concept. As you fix the screw in the distal fragment, it will pull the distal fragment to the proximal fragment so that it gives the tremendous compressive force. Remember that one. Yeah, this is the basic application of the screw. This is the proximal tibial plateau fracture, condyle fracture. It is simply fixed with the screw. You can use the screw as an individual unit for as an implant. Okay. Next one is the concept of load sharing and load bearing. What do you mean by load sharing and load bearing? Remember, nails always share the loads. This is the entrance question. Nails shares the load and plate bears the load most of the times. But there are certain exceptions. You don't need that. Remember this one. Okay, remember this ad, Kisan ad. Okay, sharing. You don't learn sharing in school. So whenever you see this ad, you should remember nails. Nails always share the load. Okay, this is the concept of sharing. What do you mean by sharing? When the load is applied, that is when you walk with the nail inside your bone, it will give the axial load to the bone. Okay, that means it will compress the bone ends. This is called axial loading. The force transfers through the bone. This is called physiological loading of the nail. That's why nails are the sharing devices, but because the force transfers through both bone and nail. So they share the force, ground reaction force from both bone and nail. Whereas plate always bears the load. Okay, I said no with some exceptions. plates are mostly load bearing devices, but if you apply it in a rigid fixation, that means in rigid DCP plates, dynamic compression plates in a rigid fixation, so it will act as a sharing. But forget about this. Load is mostly bared by the plates, that is total load is transferred through the plate. See the rightmost image. Okay, total load is transferred through the plate because there is a fracture gap here. So these are the plate bearing devices. What is the use of this bearing or sharing devices? There is a law called Wolff's law. This is asked in the entrance questions. Wolff's law states that whenever there is greater forces transfers through bone, that is greater stress is applied to the bone will adapt to remodeling. It will remodel, deposit more calcium and remodels, becomes more strong. So in what happens in load bearing devices, that is in nails, there is constant loading of the bone. So there are greater stresses in the bone. So there is a chance of development of more bone in the more strong union in the nails. Whereas plate, what happens in plate? They will transfer the load constantly from them. So there is loss of resorption of bone from the surface underlying the plate. So this is called remodel. There is loss of remodeling. Okay, it will becomes weak. So there is a chance of fracture. What are the different functions of plate? A plate can be applied in different functions. You need not remember those all functions, but I will explain it in briefly. Neutralization plate or protection plate. If you fix the fracture with a screw, see in this example, the fibula is fixed with a screw. This small one is there, no? I am showing with my pointer. This is the fracture is fixed with the screw, but this screw cannot bear the forces, counteract the forces acting on the fibula. There are heavy forces acting on this screw if we apply only this screw. So what the surgeon has done, he has used this plate as a neutralization plate, because all the forces will taken by this plate and it will protect this screw and prevents the failing of the screw. This, if you use the plate in this mode, it is called neutralization or protection, because it is protecting the original implant, that is screw that is used. Okay. Next one is the buttress plate. What do you mean by this? Is the English term. Buttressing means, see, these walls act as a buttress. Anything, if you place a wall like this, it prevents this wall from falling down. Okay, this is called buttressing effect. If you place a thing that protects the falling of the fragment, it is called buttressing. So in what happened in buttressing mode, see, the plate is present over this fracture fragment, this lateral condyle fracture fragment. So it is buttressed to this large fragment so that it will not fall. Okay, the forces acting here are shear forces, because the femur is loaded on this fracture during walking. It causes the shear force. So this plate will prevent the shearing force acting on it. So this acts as a buttress plate. Next modes are the bridge plating, compression plating, and tension band. I will tell this. Remember one major important principle: you should not apply plate on the compressive side, because a plate will fail most commonly when applied on the compressive side. I said no, when the bone is loaded eccentrically, there is a compressive side and tensile side. In femur, the medial side, that is medial side, is a compressive side. So here in this middle picture, third picture, the plate is applied on the compressive side, so it is a failure. The fourth picture shows the correct one, because it is applied on the tensile side. So plate is very strong, acts very strongly during the tensile when it applied on the tensile side. This is also wrong, because the fifth picture, even though it is applied on the tensile side, here there is a defect in the medial side, that is compressive side, there is a large defect. Okay, if you apply this plate in a tension band principle, in a tension band mode, if you apply it when there is a defect in the medial side, what happens during force acting, the medial side will bend first. These blue arrows are showing, no, the medial side will bend first. As there is no bone to prevent that bending, the total load is transferred to the plate. during bending. The bending force is totally taken by the plate and it fails again. Okay, whereas in the fourth picture, the medial side is intact. So that force is transferred through bone and it will prevent the plate from fracture. Okay, fatigue. So what are the different types of plates? There is a DCP, dynamic compression plate. DCP stands for dynamic compression plate. It looks like this. Okay, it is a plate with simple round holes with a gap in between. Okay. What is the dynamic principle? Dynamic compression principle. Okay. You don't need the depth of knowledge in this, but remember this one. What happens in dynamic DCP plate is, if you one side of the fracture is fixed with screw and plate, okay, whereas the other side of the fracture is fixed with a dynamic screw, dynamic loading in the dynamic hole. See in this picture, the hole of a dynamic plate is a cut cylinder. Okay, see this is a cut cylinder placed in at an angle. This is angle. These are two cylinders. This is yellow color one is a straight cylinder and this black dotted line is a another cylinder which are placed in certain angle. Okay, so when the screw is loaded in this is the hole. When the screw is loaded in this, initially you will load it in at one corner. Okay, what happens when this conical part of the screw head contacts the plate, this plate, it will lead to resistance because there is a, it cannot go further. This conical part cannot go further. Now what happens? Newton's third law will apply here. What happens when the screw is further fixed, that is torque is applied? See the right side images, it will move in this direction, okay, towards your right side. See, this is, there is sliding of the screw towards center from corner. Here it is in the corner, here it is in the center. So this is the action. Newton's third law says there is a equal opposite reaction. This force is the action. And what is the opposite force? The plate moves towards the opposite side. In order to drive the screw towards the center, it moves to the opposite side. Now what happens? See, this one side of the plate is fixed to the bone, so it cannot move. Okay, the other side you are fixing the dynamic screw. So what happens if you, when you, it engages the this corner portion, it slides towards the center, so that plate moves to in the opposite direction. This plate is already fixed in the opposite side with the bone, so it takes this overall bone and this screw and this part of the plate along with it and it compresses the bone. This leads to the dynamic compression because you are tightening the screw and it is compressing the fracture side. This is called dynamic compression plate. This is the principle. Okay, this is LCDCP. LC stands for limited contact, not locking compression. Remember, this is the limited contact dynamic compression plate. What happens here, to prevent the biology, see the plate, posterior part of this plate is cut at this, there is a cuttings this side because they will not completely contact with the bone. The DCP principle is it completely adheres to the bone. See in this image, the bone is completely in contact with the plate. So there is loss of periosteal blood supply in DCP, dynamic compression plate. So they modified the design. Unique shape undersurface makes limited contact with bone and thus preserves the blood supply. These cuttings will lead to less area of contact and less damage to the blood supply. This is limited contact DCP. This is the application of DCP in the proximal humerus shaft fracture. Yeah, I said no, already I repeated this slide. This is the compressive side and this is the tensile side. Now comes to locking compression plate. What are the locking compression plates is? Here the hole, see the hole of the locking compression plate. It has a threads on one side and smooth surface on the other side. There is a locking screw. I already showed it, no? Locking screw. It will lock its threads with this part of the hole so that it becomes a rigid fixation. See, the left side of this image is a dynamic compression plate, DCP. See, there is no gap between this blue part, that is bone, and this brown part, that is plate. Whereas in locking compression, that is right image, there is a gap showing that one. See, this arrow is showing, red arrow is showing the gap. Because the whole plate is fixed, locked with the screw, it cannot be further compressed. So it has more biological property. This is the LCP principle. See, LCP acts as a completely load bearing device because the force comes through bone here. This is blue arrow shows the force coming through the bone, and it will transfer total force to plate through this screw, and it will transfer through the plate, and it will again transfers through the bone on the other side. This fracture part is completely free of the forces. This is the principle of LCP. This is rigid fixation. Where what happens in DCP, the lower image, the load comes through the bone and it goes through the plate, and as the plate is contact with the bone, the force passes through both bone and the plate, so that the fracture part will carry some of the force and it will transfer the force through other side of the bone. This is the DCP principle. This is LCP principle. See, total force is transferred only through plate. This is the example of the LCP using in the supracondylar fractures. Now comes to tension band wiring. What is tension band wiring? A tension band converts the tension into compression at the opposite cortex. That is, in a simple term, see this example. This is a olecranon fracture. You are seeing it in a lateral view. Okay. This proximal part is the olecranon part, which is pulled by the triceps, and this distal part is the ulna, which is flexed by the attachment of the flexor muscle, that is biceps, which is attached to radial tuberosity actually, but this is pulling the elbow into flexion. This leads to a distractive force. The force is acting eccentrically, so it is distracting the two fragments. Now what happens when you connect these two fragments with a tension band? When these two fragments will pull, this tension band will convert the tensile force into compressive force. See, this diagram is depicting it. If you load this fracture on one side, that is eccentrical loading, this surface go into compression and this will go into tension. But in tension band wiring, what will we do? We place a tension band here on the tension surface. Now if you apply this 100 kg load on the eccentrically, this will go into compression and this force will pull this string, that is tension band, into tension. But again, as this is fixed, it will again combined into compressive force. This will lead to prevention of the distraction forces. In a simple measure, a tension band is a device which exerts a force equal in magnitude but opposite in direction to a applied distracting tensile force. Okay. Next one is this is the tension band principle. This is a common application. Patella fractures. We will treat it with a tension band wiring. Next one is the nails. The most common used nail is previously used is a Pünzner's nail. Remember, K stands for Pünzner. Okay. As there is other name K in the K wires, that is Kirchner's wire. This is Pünzner's nail. How do you identify this nail? It has a triflange shape. This is clover leaf. The right side of the image is showing the clover leaf. It looks like a clover leaf. So it is a clover leaf type of nail. The one side of it has a slot. This slot is always applied on the tension side. Okay. This slot should always applied on the tension side of the femur, that is on the lateral side. This is the K nail, which is not used routinely nowadays because there are more advanced implants. Okay. But this nail has no locking property. There is no holes to fix the screws. Next comes the tibial nail. How do you identify the tibial nail? It has a classical bending. Okay. There is sharp bending you see here. This bending is known as Herzog bend. Why this bending is there? Because see, the lateral surface of tibia, that is the lateral configuration of tibia, has a posterior bow. Okay, this angulation is, this is anterior side, this is posterior. There is a posterior angulation in the proximal tibia. So when you introduce this nail, the nail should configure with this proximal tibial configuration. So there is a bend in the proximal tibia. So you should always identify this bend. Like a pathology slide, you remember, no? If there is a bend, it is a tibial nail. This bend is known as Herzog bend. It is a bend of 10 to 11 degrees. Okay. If you see posteriorly, it is a 110 degrees. Okay. If you see anteriorly, it is a 11 degrees or 10 degrees. Okay. This is the Herzog bend. These are the holes in the proximal part of the nail. This is the dynamic hole. This is the static hole. You don't need the depth of the dynamization and static hole. This is the femoral nail. Okay. See, this is slightly bowed anteriorly. This is not a straight nail because it is slightly bowed anteriorly. It is a femoral nail. You identify if there is a slight anterior bow, it is a femoral nail. Why? Because there is a bow. See, when you place a femur on the straight surface, it is not a straight bone. It has an anterior bow. So the configuration of the nail should accommodate this configuration. So it has a slight anterior bow. So see this one. The cut surface of the femur has a slight anterior bow. And when you place this slight anterior bow in this anterior medullary cavity, it will fit nicely. So it has a slight anterior bow. These are the two nails compared. Okay. See, the lower one is a tibial nail because it has a sharp bend here, proximal part. Whereas this is a somewhat straight nail. This is the femoral nail. See, now the advantages of IM nailing compared to the plate, because I have discussed the momentum. The greater the momentum, you see in the first slides, the opening of the door analogy is there, no? If there is a more momentum, you need less force to bend it. So if you apply a plate, it has a more distance from the central force axis. So it has a large momentum. So it is easy to bend the plate by the external forces. So the plate has less mechanical advantage. Whereas nail, see this black arrow acting force is very near to the this nail. So there is a less momentum. Here is the nail. If you try to bend the nail from here, it is very difficult because you are using the less momentum. That's why nails are more stable than the plates given for the particular configuration of the fracture. This is not the universal law, but for a given fracture, there is a more stability for the nails. Next comes the DHS. This is dynamic hip screw, or otherwise known as sliding hip screw. The basic concept is here. First see the parts of this implant. Here is a barrel plate. This is a barrel plate with a barrel. This round one is a barrel, and this is the Richards screw. Okay, this is called the Richards screw. It has a typical configuration. The distal part has a distal tip has a threads, and the proximal tip is cut into a rectangular, not a circular, because it should prevent the rotationary component of the head. You don't need to understand it, but it has a rectangular configuration. See how it acts. If you asked what is the principle of the DHS, you directly say the controlled collapse of the fracture. This is the basic point. It is repeatedly asked in entrance questions also, in your Viva also. It has a controlled collapse. See, this Richards screw is fixed. It is used in the intertrochanteric fractures. Okay, it is fixed with the proximal part. Is the Richards screw is fixed in the proximal part, that is head and neck, and distal part is fixed to the shaft of the femur. This screw always toggles, moves inside and outside. Okay, telescopes inside the fracture, so that what happens, this fracture get concentrically, that is controlledly collapses. This what you remember. This is about this. This is enough for you. Not more details are not needed. The controlled collapse is its principle. Yeah. See, the angle of barrel to the plate is most commonly used is 135 degrees. This angle between these two arrows is 135 degrees. Okay. And next one is the dynamic condylar screws. This is more commonly used in supracondylar fractures of the femur. Okay. The plate and the barrel angle is here 95 degrees. Remember, this is 95 degrees. Both look similar, but see, This is the lower one is a DHS, upper one is a DCS. The difference is the angle between the barrel plate. Okay, this is 95 degrees. Okay, 95 degrees is DCS, and 130, 135 or 150 or 140 any degree is a DHS, dynamic hip screw. Okay, these are the applications of the DCS, dynamic condylar screw in supracondylar fractures. Next comes the K wires. This is K stands for Kirschner here, whereas K in the nail stands for Kunsher. Kunsher nail, this is Kirschner's wire. This is repeatedly asked in Viva also. This is most commonly used implant. The tip is very sharp. Okay, either it is stroker shape or it is a triflant shape, but it is very sharp to cut the bone. The most commonly used to fix the small fragments, that is radius supracondylar fractures of humerus in pediatrics. Okay, most commonly either in provisional fixation also. Next one is Stillman pin. The identification point is it looks like a somewhat large K wire, but the proximal tip here is triangular in shape to hold into the instrument, that is drill. This is a triangular in shape, whereas in K wire it is both rounded shape. Okay, this is an ender snail. It was previously used, but nowadays there is very less application of ender snail. The identification point, it is there is a round hole at the tip, proximal end, whereas tip is slightly triangularly wedged. Okay. Now comes the rush nail. Previously it was most commonly used. It has a typical bow. Okay, this is curve, umbrella shaped curve is there. No, this is a typical identification for the rush nail. It is most commonly used in small bones, that is fibula and forearm diaphyseal fractures. Okay, forerunner. This is the forerunner of most modern elastic intramedullary fixation. Previously it was used, but nowadays TENS came. TENS stands for titanium elastic nailing system. Okay, this TENS has a different color indication. This is made up of titanium, and the tip is a somewhat angulated and blunt tip. Okay, these are used in pediatric fractures. The concept principle here is 3-point fixation. When you introduce two nails, they will bulge at the fracture point and they will hold the fracture without any distraction. This is 3-point concept. Next one is external fixator system. This is the Shanch pin. This is commonly used in the external fixator and connecting rods. These are the two parts mainly used in the external fixator system. See, this is the external fixator. This is most commonly used in non-unions, open fractures, and infected non-unions. Okay, or otherwise infected osteomyelitic fractures like that. The principle here is the implant is outside the body, so there is less chance of infection. There is minimal contact of the Shanch screws with the bone, and outer side these connecting rods are attached. Okay, yeah, this is another example of external fixator. You can use in any configuration. Okay, next comes the Ilsrau technique. This is most popularly used technique nowadays. You can manage any type of non-unions or malunions with this ring fixators. In this, there is a primarily rings with equally spaced holes, and the concept here is tensioned wires. The wire C, the K wires is here tension. This tension will hold the fracture in a specific position so that you can slowly distract or compress it. You can create a new bone. This is called concentric distraction or compression. This principle is distractive osteosynthesis. Okay. Next, what is implant versus prosthesis? I already told, no, implant supports the biological tissues till normal function is regained, whereas prosthesis replaces missing part. See, here is the prosthesis, the terminator, this eye, this hand, because these are replacing the original parts. So, for you to remember, these are the prosthesis. Anything that replaces the original part is a prosthesis. Okay, like total knee prosthesis. This is a total hip prosthesis. This is AMP, Austin Moore prosthesis. Okay, and this is Thompson prosthesis. What are the major? How do you identify? The AMP has these holes. Okay, these holes is for ingrowth of the bone, not for pulling. Okay, this hole is there. No, this is for pulling of the implant. This corner hole. These holes are for ingrowth of the bone, so that there is a affirmative fixation. This is the Thompson process. Where will you use the Thompson process? When there is a loss of neck, that is Kalkar, you will use the Thompson process. This is AMP process. See, there is a this collar. This collar fits on the this neck Kalkar part. Okay, Kalkar is the thickest part of the base of the neck. When it sits on the neck Kalkar, the implant is very stable. If you have no neck, you have to use the Thompson process because it has already neck in it. This has no neck, it has only collar. Okay, these are the major differences of Austin Moore and Thompson. Okay, here see the neck. If neck is present, you use the Austin Moore process in fracture neck of femurs. If the neck is absent, that is Kalkar is absent, you use Thompson process. Next one is the bipolar process. Okay, the bipolar process has two poles, that is one small head inside it and the outer larger head. So this small head rotates inside this outer head. This has a more mechanical advantage. You don't need that one. If you see these two heads, this is a bipolar process. These are the implants and process. I will repeat again it in the next class with basic identification marks. Okay. So for a successful orthopedic surgery, you have to follow these principles. Biomechanical assessment of fracture. How the fracture has occurred, what are the mechanical fractures, mechanics included in it. And you should have thorough preoperative planning. And you should respect the soft tissues. Okay, you should not dissect the soft tissues as you like. You should always respect the blood supply and soft tissues of the fracture. And follow the principles of fixation. You should have proper knowledge of fixation and good post-operative care is also needed. Okay. Yeah, now you can go. Like the Anarkali, you can wake up and go to your lunch or the next class. Okay. Thank you. And my email ID is Venkatesh749 VNKATESH7498 @gmail.com. You can mail me if you have any doubts regarding it. Thank you.